I think we are properly constituted, and I would want us to please give honor to Nigeria, the national anthem, please. Ladies and gentlemen, a great Amazon walked into this room. Did you people realize that? You did? Start clapping then if you did. Our Minister of Environment just walked in.
What is she doing talking about population?
A lot of us do not know what this woman had done for the women of Nigeria.
I don't know. I haven't done it yet.
We only know that she was, at the time before she left the country, that she was the senior special assistant to the last president, President Goodluck Jonathan. She was his senior special assistant on Millennium Development Goals. She did a lot of wonderful work, but for me, that is a reproductive health and rights activist. I don't care about any other thing that she did, but you know what I care about? For the fact that this lady funded the midwifery service scheme and then gave us the reduction of maternal mortality that we have. Ajamna, may God bless you. I have not acknowledged you publicly, but I remember the conversation we had. And then when I convinced her, she said, AGK, we are going to do it. And then she said, I think it's best we do it the primary healthcare agency, because they are nearer and they are more fast spread in terms of programming. Ladies and gentlemen, that we had a reduction of 30 to 40% maternal mortality in Nigeria was due to the fact that this lady showed some direction. And I haven't seen you really clap for her. Thank you. I have in the first item here in terms of goodwill messages, I'm going to invite our good brother here, who is representing the chairman of National Population Commission, Mr. David A. Garwa. He is a federal commissioner representing the chairman. David, sir, can you come to give your goodwill message, sir? Please welcome him properly.
The chairman of this occasion, my mentor, Professor Kimabu Gunje, they talked about the geography part of it, but I think we know him much better in the urban development sector. So most of us in the urban planning sector, he's our doing. The Honorable Minister, so much has been said about you. Adamawa, Gombe, and Borno. I think the three of us make up the Northeast circle there. So we are complete. We are more interested in reproductive health. Can I say I stand on the established protocol? Sure. This is what Nigeria has exported to the world. On behalf of the chairman of National Population Commission, we wish to thank you very much, all the partners in reproductive health. We want to appreciate all the support you have been giving to ensuring that issues of population are brought to the front burner of national issues. As we are all aware and has been informed, the national population is very key on issues of population. And by our constitution, which states that we are in charge of all demographic issues, we are and always welcome all our partners as we strive to bring population issues to the front burner of national development. Permit me to say that the National Population Commission is striving very hard to bring together a credible, verifiable, and reliable population census in Nigeria. You all know our history of population censuses, and we hope that we will build on our mistakes and be able to conduct a sensible and well-articulated, acceptable population census for the country. From our program, we are supposed to have a census this year, as you all know, following the 10-year annual population census nationally approved all over the country, all over the world. However, because of one thing or the other, if things go well, we tend to have the next population census in the first quarter of 2018. And thereby, we will see population not as a liability, but as an asset to national development. That's why our NPC is driving that angle. During the next census, which we have done our projections, we have done our budgeting, we intend to explain to people know that half of the money going to spend is going to be on asset development, producing and using people so that it's going to assist in our poverty alleviation, because at least we're going to spend at least 101 billion naira on remuneration of census enumerators and all those to facilitate it. So we use census not just as a counting exercise, but as a way of economic development for this country. And as we work towards those ones, we'll count on all our partners to ensure that our journey to 2018 census becomes very credible, and we hope that as we go along, we'll continue to get more and more support. And as we carry out this annual population and lecture series, we hope that all partners here, as we go back, will have something to carry about, and that our country will be the better off. Thank you very much, and may God bless you.
Population dynamics has and continues to be core to UNFPA's mandate, as we realize that population dynamics affects practically all aspects of development. It is core to our current and future planning at whatever levels, whether it's a project, whether it's at a state or national or at a regional level. We need to be able to know what population we are planning for if we are to plan adequately for it. Some parts of the world are currently dealing with a declining population with a larger proportion of older people and a shrinking younger population. They need to see how to address this as it comes with its challenges. On the other hand, for sub-Saharan Africa, including Nigeria, we are faced with a situation of a significant rise in population. Rising population does not necessarily have to be a bad thing if we are able to sustain it. However, the rate at which the population in the region, including Nigeria, is growing indicates that within the next 20 to 30 years, if nothing is done, the population will have more than doubled. Projections for Nigeria have shown that population could rise to over 400 million. The questions left for us to consider are, will the country be able to support this population? Will there be enough schools? Will there be enough health facilities? Will there be enough housing? Will there be enough land, water? Will the economy be able to sustain itself? Or are we heading for some potential major challenges? Clearly, we need to take action, and action to avoid those challenges within the next 2 to 3 decades. While we note that, we also note that many developing countries are undergoing a rapid demographic transition that begins with falling infant and child death rates, due largely to improvements in health care, nutrition, and sanitation, as couples realize that the reduced risk of childbirth death means that it is easier for them to achieve their desired family size with fewer births. The result of this is a population structure in which there's a greater number of working age adults in relation to children and older people who depend on them. This, coupled with the right policies and institutions, building on young people's human capital, can begin to provide countries with dramatic economic growth associated with increase in working age share of its population, leading to a demographic transition, a unique opportunity for economic progress and poverty reduction. This is the opportunity that Nigeria has. Nigeria has a large population, and particularly a large youthful population. Unfortunately, a large proportion of this population is dependent, but the situation does not need to remain that way. There is an opportunity for Nigeria to trigger and maintain the transition by ensuring that women have access to the family planning services they need. But there's also the opportunity for Nigeria to invest in its young and youthful population, invest in their education, invest in their health, invest in their employability, thus maximizing the potential of these young people to become productive members of the community. It is encouraging to see that while we note that there is an opportunity, that situation has been noted by Nigeria and within Nigeria, and efforts have been taking place over the last 4 years. And it is this particular session, lecture, I think is good testimony to that effect. I would like to reiterate that UNFPA is committed to continue supporting and playing its part in working with the government and other stakeholders to ensure that we support any efforts to enable the country reap the demographic dividend in the years to come. I would like to conclude by congratulating Her Excellency, the Honorable Minister, the chairperson of this occasion, PPFN, and other partners and agencies that have been involved in organizing this event on an annual basis, and encourage that this event continues for years to come, because this is what is going to lead us to really reap the demographic dividend and get to the sustainable development that we want. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
While I will, in a short while, invite the chairman of my board of trustees, I want to recognize Mero Mandara, the woman with the deep pocket for Nigeria, doing great work. Where is Mero Mandara? Please wave wherever you are. Let's recognize you. Yes, she's there. Now let me find out, are you the leader of that intimidating advocacy from the youth, coming from the back side of the hall? I won't put it past you. Okay. They are taking their seats. I thought it was to intimidate us in their advocacy. Give the youths a good round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite the Sarkin Yakijaba, who will give us his own goodwill message as the Board of Trustee Chair of Association for the Advancement of Family Planning. Sarkin, give him a good round of applause. This is my boss.
The Honorable Minister, my chair, please, Honorable Minister, help me to recognize the established protocol. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here this second morning in the historic and very honorable conference. On behalf of AFE, Board of Trustees, and the management of AFE, I congratulate the federal government of Nigeria, the partner development agencies, and as well as governments at all levels. The conference of this nature, it is organized simply to gather all the human and material resources that will enable facilitation, advocacy issue, feedback on the way forward, on the challenges as well, and all other avenues that hinder effort toward achieving this goal. The AAP have been doing very well and continue to do well. First and foremost, we continue to strengthen the collaboration with the government, the partner development agencies, media agencies, and the members of faith organizations. The faith organizations have been the custodians of the major grassroots. They continue to bridge gap between service providers and the community at all levels. We will lead the journey into advocacy to ensure allocation of which resources into reproductive health at all levels of the government. And as well as we continue to educate and to continue to create enabling environment for educating all Nigerians and also to ensure access, affordable, quality family planning commodities. ALP is a non-governmental organization. We need support of development partners, government alike, and all other well-to-do meaning individuals to save the life of the voiceless mothers, voiceless children dying across the 70% population is in the rural area, and that is the burden where the people, the women suffer in the rural area, then in the urban centers. And then sometimes ago, I make comparisons. Every day, Nigeria will lose 110 women, equivalent to plane crash involving First Lady of the Governor. You can see in the, what I call it, breaking news that plane crash. It was 3 people in the helicopter crash will attract more attention of the people, while innocent, voiceless, 110 mothers are dying every day. This is time. We need to come together to join hands to mitigate the burden of these dates and the action in our hands. We must not just hold our hand to allow the women die, children die while we have action. The action is educating everyone, providing services, strengthening the collaboration, also advocacy with the government to improve human resource for health at the various levels of government, at the community level. The main challenge is human resource for health, mostly administration of long-acting reversible contraceptions. So we need government intervention at all levels. Continue and also strengthen the tax system policy, whereby CHIU and others can be also trained for the administration of this land. So I must congratulate and also commend and thank the effort of partner development agencies who have been supporting this move. And we continue to appreciate also the effort of our present government and all other government that for the huge investments they make. And we need more investment. We need more and heavy investment. Thank you most sincerely.
And powerfully spoken. Can we give him a very rounding thanks offering? Thank you, sir. I think I would like to invite the co-chair of APLS, my good friend Mola Kusabeji, to introduce this giant called Professor Akin Maboguje. Mola, please.
18th of last month, Prof clocked 85 years. Say happy birthday to him.
Happy birthday, sir. Stand up. Yes, let's stand up, please. Birthday to you. Sit down, sir. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
On your behalf, I have prayed that Prof will live for another 85 years. If he wants. Prof is one of the the academic and intellectual life wire of this country. So I want him to live long. I have a bio of Prof here, and I'm debating within myself whether I need to go through it. Actually, there are just 3 paragraphs. When we are trying to put together his CV is about 120 pages. After going through the CV, I had to take a bottle of water. Maybe after going through these 3 paragraphs, I will ask for a cup of tea. You will hear things related to banks. Everything about Prof is intellectual. I was saying to myself, doesn't he have an hobby? In this bio, there's not a single hobby. Don't you watch APLS, Man U versus Arsenal? Or Africa Magic? Nothing. Professor Akinlawoma Bogunje, former Chancellor, Bells University of Technology, Ota in Ogun State, and Chairman, Center for Human Security, Olusegun Obasanjo Presidential Library, Abeokuta, and the Foundation for Development and Environmental Initiatives, Ibadan, was former Executive Chairman of the Development Policy Center, Ibadan, Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences, Director of the Planning Study Program, and Professor of Geography. I want to add, it's not only geography, Professor of Medical Geography of the University of Ibadan, Nigeria. I don't have to repeat the years, you know it's 85. He received his university education at both the University College Ibadan and the University College in London. Actually, he went to one of the best secondary schools in Nigeria, Ibadan Grammar School. And that's my school. He graduated Doctor of Philosophy in Geography from the University of London in 1961 and taught, some of us were born by then, and taught for many years at the University of Ibadan, Nigeria. He also taught in a number of universities outside Nigeria, notably in Britain, Sweden, Brazil, and the United States of America. In the latter country, referring to Britain, he was the Navy Escovitz Distinguished Professor of African Studies for the section 1978 to 1979. In your brochure, you will see Mambokunje. I won't say it that way. Professor Mambokunje has served in a number of public and private sector positions in Nigeria. Notably among these are as Chairman, Western State Forestry Commission 68 to 74, Senior Advisor on Mapping, National Population Commission 72 to 75, Chairman, National Council for Management Development 76 to 79, Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of the Governing Council of Ogun State Endowment Fund 89 to 94, Vice Chairman of the Directorate of Food, Roads and Rural Infrastructure. Remember that with the former President Obasanjo. In the Office of the President 86 to 91, Executive Chairman of the National Board of Community Banks 1991 to 1994. I think when Prof left, those banks disappeared. Chairman of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria 2002 to 2008. In the private sector, he was the chairman, First Interstate Bank, 95 to 2005, which later merged with other banks to form the Unity Bank, for which he was also chairman, 2005 to 2011. Professor Mambokunje has been the recipient of numerous honors, both within and outside Nigeria. He is one of the very earliest recipients in 1980 of the Nigerian National Order of Merit, NNOM, the highest national award for distinguished contribution to the academic and intellectual life of the country. can see why I call him one of the intellectual life wire of this country. He is also the recipient of the National Honors of Commander of the Order of Niger, CON, 2001, and of the Order of the Federal Republic, CFR, 2011, and he is one of the 100 recipients of the Centenary Award to mark the 100th year of the amalgamation of Nigeria. Let me go just to the end. He is Honorary Fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Town Planner. He is also the first African to be elected Foreign Associate of the United States National Academy of Sciences, 1999. Prof, we are delighted to have you. Thank you very much.
Wow, wow, wow. The young ones, can I hear you make some noise? Prof, they want to live up to 85 at least like you. That's why they made this noise. So I'm sure you're giving them your blessings. Thank you, Prof.
Loud enough.
The Honorable Minister of Environment, and thanks colleague for ensuring he established the protocol. So I will stand and sit on the protocol you've established. Let me start by joining in welcoming you all to this fourth in the series of annual population lectures. I also want specially to welcome our guest lecturer, the indefatigable and indomitable Honorable Minister of Environment, Hajia Amina Mohammed, whose many national commitments and responsibilities had necessitated postponing this lecture from January this year until now. I'm really delighted that the Honorable Minister was still willing to honor the invitation. I want to thank the Planning Committee, drawn from the National Population Commission, the Planned Parenthood Federation of Nigeria, and other national and international organizations for the repeated invitation to me to chair this lecture. I confess I was so tried to decline the invitation, since when I clocked the age of 80 in 2011, I had promised myself I had paid my dues to the nation and I can rightfully withdraw from all public engagement of this time.
No.
But the issue of population growth and how it affects our development as a nation is one that is so close to my heart that I had to revise my decision. I note that the topic of the lecture is Nigeria, the third largest population by 2050, the way forward. I confess that this topic intrigued me a lot, since we don't need to find a way forward if we want to be third largest. We just go on as we've been doing, just keep having babies and babies and babies and babies. I confess that the topic intrigued me because the present trajectory of population growth is the way to deepening poverty and irredeemable immiseration of our people if we don't change. By 2015, we were something, I said it was worth noting that the first time we attempted a real census in this country, which was in 1952-53, we returned a population of about 31 million. By 2015, that is just under, 65 years or something. We were already over 150, between 150 and 170, a more than 5-fold increase in our population in the space of that 55 years. And the land mass hasn't changed. In fact, I was reminding some people that just as we were breeding, the cows too were breeding, and their present problem is handling the growth of the human population and the growth in the cow's population. That growth rate of 5 times in 55 years put us in the 7th position by 2015 in the world, the 7th position. That is after China and India, the billionaire countries, they have over 1 billion people. Then we have to reckon with the United States, which was 307 million, Indonesia, which was 250 million, Pakistan, which was 222 million, Brazil, which was already to over 200 billion by 2015. Those are senior brothers. So if we must get to the 3rd position, we must jump over all of those other people to become the next after China and India. So for us to do that by 2015 means that we are going to be doing or not doing something which these countries also will be doing or not doing. However, in the population field, there is expected to be some close correlation between population and development, or more correctly, between the quality of population and the level of development. You know, when Nigeria says it's the largest economy, they never say per capita or not. Because as soon as you say per capita, there's nothing to us. But aggregate-wise, yes, what else can you do? 150 million compared to who? China, Egypt, South Africa? Just the sheer number means that we must have the largest population, the largest gross domestic product. So a country that is just obsessed with the number of its people can discover that it is simply breeding and breeding into accelerating poverty. This is why countries that are serious about dramatically raising the level of their development had to intervene policy-wise and practically in determining the acceptable level of the fertility of their women folk, limiting it, as in the case of China, to 1 child per family, 1 child per woman of childbearing age. Throughout her childbearing age, she can have only 1 child. In spite of that, they are already over 1 billion. And it takes a lot of strong government, not the type of weak governments we see all around Africa. Now, this allows a country to plan decisively for what it takes to rear children to adult status. UNFPA has outlined most of those, what it takes, because it's a high cost to breed children, to take children from being babies to adults. The cost of providing them clothing and feeding, of educating them, of providing adequate health care for them, and eventually securing for them opportunities of gainful employment in a robust, diversified, and fast-growing economy. It must therefore be of some significance that President Muhammadu Buhari, in his first coming as the military head of state, was reported to have become proactive about family planning as a result of his visit to an army barrack in Lagos, where he felt scandalized by the number of children who were running around in the barracks. I mean, barracks is a place for soldiers, and so suddenly he went there and all he could see were these small children running all over. Indeed, it was this proactive stance of President Buhari at that time that encouraged many family planning non-governmental organizations, which up to that time used to hide in side corners, back groups, roads. In Lagos in particular, they then came out onto Ikorodu Road and have a big signboard to say, we are now Family Planning Federation of Nigeria. So they moved from those inconspicuous locations to display their services on major streets in our cities and towns. And it was that proactive stance of Muhammadu Buhari that raised the issue of what should be the acceptable family size or acceptable number of children per family. It raised it to the level of serious national discourse. Unfortunately, like many other critical national issues, that of aggressive campaign for family planning has been relegated to the back burner in this country.
USID?
USID is around Gates.
At that time, we then agreed it was four children. It wasn't clear whether it was 4 children per family or 4 children per woman. But either way, we discussed it, and it was in the public media. So even in the present situation of economic recession, when the cost of childbearing must be stressful to many families, no one is factoring in the need to do something about our family size, about family planning, to ensure that the country remains resilient if the economic crisis were to persist beyond present expectation or occur again in the future. Fortunately, we are privileged to have someone with us today, the guest lecturer, who has some clout in the corridors of power to discuss where the country stands on this issue presently and to give some indications of what to expect about a review of Nigeria's population policy and what sort of vibrant programs are likely to be articulated to stem the tide of the burgeoning youth unemployment, which has at its very base a national situation of uncontrolled population growth. I welcome you all again as to what must be a very exciting and constructive or instructive lecture, and wish you very fruitful and rewarding experience of listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Did you see that? He was standing rock straight, isn't he? Can we give him a standing ovation? This is an 85-year-old man.
She was appointed by our president to this position after really a very distinguished career at the United Nations, when in 2012, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, invited her to help him to facilitate the development of one of the most important documents of the world, and that is the Sustainable Development Goals. This document, as we know, is shaping and will shape all the development agendas of all of us. And to her credit, she was the one who was responsible for the development of this document. As I said, it really requires tactics, patience, and everything that someone who follows cattle can understand to bring together 190 countries to agree to a document. So once again, let's thank her for this important role that she played. But I think that when Ban Ki-moon invited her, she saw something. There was something that she did that really recommended her to this role that she has now, she was appointed to. And that is the important and critical role of helping Nigeria to develop the MDGs. The MDGs before her really never existed. And sadly, after her, also it did not exist. So it was because of the role and the work that she did of the MDGs that really why the Secretary General of the United Nations saw the talent, saw the commitment, and saw the passion, and said, if you can do that in Nigeria, I'm sure you can do that one at the United Nations. So we thank you and we recognize the role that she played with the MDGs. Prior to the MDG work, of course, she was one of the people who actually she founded the Agri-Projects Consortium, which was one of the most important institutions that really delivered on a number of the development indicators, especially in the 1990s. And from there, she worked with ACON Nigeria in Kaduna in association with Norman and Durban Architects of the United Kingdom. Haja Amina Mohammed is a practical, committed person to the field of development. She has worked with us for more than 30 years in this area. She established and founded a think tank, Center for Development Policy Solutions, because she's really at the cutting edge of what can we do and what should we do in order to respond to these problems that we encounter. She worked with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as well as the United Nations Secretary General Global Sustainability Panel, as well as the African Women's Millennium Initiative. And I think that one of the things that really happened recently, when one of the heads of states and governments in the continent invited her and said, look, the African Union is in big crisis. You have exemplified the kind of continent that we want. You succeeded in bringing together 190 countries to bring a solution to our problems. And that was when President Kagame of Rwanda invited her to be the chair of the panel which is now supposed to work on review of the African Union. This distinctive role that she has played in Nigeria, in the world, but she always reminds us that it's what we do at home that matters. It's what we do at home that matters. On many occasions, when we call her, she will tell us that she's in Gombe. That whatever we do in New York, whatever we do in DC, in Geneva, or wherever we do. It is what we do at the level of our villages, what we do to the common persons on our streets, that really matters. And I think that her touch with her people, her connections with the ordinary citizens, is what has made her to be what she is. So I was not surprised when she walked in without even anyone noticing that the minister is in the hall. Because she didn't have to be the paparazzi and all the gra-gra that goes with protocols. We are very privileged.
Oh dear.
Indeed, we are honored that that you have agreed to speak to us on this very, very important issue. An important issue that you as a Minister for Environment probably know this more than the rest of us, because I recall that after your immediate environment, you are in Enugu, you are in Ogoni, you are in Sokoto, you are in Jigawa, you are in Maiduguri. You saw the environmental crisis that we are facing. And I believe that you are well equipped, better informed to come and speak to us on this key important issue of how are we going to manage our human resources for the betterment of our country. Honorable Minister, you are welcome, and welcome here. Thank you.
I need a better welcome for our Minister of Environment and Amazon on our rights.
Thank you very much. Where do I begin? Let me just say that wasn't me. No, but when one starts to reel an introduction to someone, I keep coming back to basics and what all our foundations are about, and I ask myself the question, what is really the greatest achievement that I would say I have? And for me, it's my 4 girls and 2 boys, with thanks to the chairman of the occasion, Professor Akim Mangulunju, CFR, CON. All I can say is that at 85, I want to be like you when I grow up. Bawana Kole, the chair of APLS, who is certainly today, as I look around this room, he is leaving no one behind. And to have all of you here from every shade of the issues and challenges that we face to continue this discussion is quite remarkable. So thank you, Kole, for bringing us all together. Excellencies, our royal fathers, Honorable Sauda Tusani, who's I always say my partner in crime on the MDGs because we fought many a battle together, but she was also my big sister. Distinguished delegates to the 4th Nigeria National Planning Conference, I would like to also recognize the Planned Parenthood Federal PPFN, let me just say PPFN, the Nigerian Population Commission, and the Planning Committee that includes all our wonderful international partners who work with us daily in the field. And to remember that there are some of us that are not here today, and I wanted to just pay tribute to one, and that is Bilkisu MNI, as she used to be known, because she really was a hero for us in the struggle for maternal health in Nigeria. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have to say I am really excited, but I'm also humbled by the presence of so many of you that work on a daily basis, and I almost feel like I don't deserve this podium to be sitting here lecturing. So let me just say I have a few remarks that I would like to share with you, because as I look around the room, I'm in awe of those that are pursuing what is an incredible responsibility, but a challenge that is still very much a work in progress. And so today it's another opportunity to bring all of us together to really strengthen our resolve that we will do more when we leave the doors of this room after this event. congratulate, as I say again, the platform. It's one for a conversation. It's never should be about you and us, but it's about we, because of the collective responsibility that we have for addressing this crisis that we have on our hands. And besides, when Kole says jump, as a sister I say how high. And so we are here today. My position as the Minister of Environment was, when it was announced, you know, you're nominated and then you're screened, and then you sit and you wait to be told what portfolio you have, and you're on live TV, so you have to have a straight face no matter what portfolio you get. And I must admit, when I got environment, I thought, okay, how do I just keep this straight face? Because it was an enormous challenge, one that I had not really faced before, even in my 4 years of trying to herd 196 states to an agreement. Never had the challenge of the environment part. That was always someone else's responsibility at the end of the corridor on climate change. Not only was I being nominated and then given the portfolio of environment, the very next week I was in Paris, and we were trying to negotiate what became a historic agreement. But having spent a year now in the seat of environment, clearly the alignment of what we do with climate change, with environment, the SDGs and the discussions that we have here, we see every day the challenges of population as the root cause for many of the issues that we find with climate change. And just to remind everyone that we do say that the population crisis is real, we said climate change is real. But one of the things that we always underscore is that climate change is man-made, and the population crisis is man-made. So now we have women in charge, maybe we can make a difference. Women, you agree? So the solutions, I believe, we have, and the theme of this year's population lecture, Nigeria, the third largest population by 2050, the way forward, I think, gives us an opportunity in a timely way to address some of these challenges as this administration tries to reshape and reposition where we're going. What we'll say from the last few years of, as we will often say, we misrode small. The 2016 State of the World Population, which was formally publicly presented by the UNFPA on the 26th, I think that really underscored the pressure that we're under, the crisis that is apparent, the statistics that are there. As I said, like we say, climate change is real. This crisis is very real. It's very real in everyone's life, and I think we need to look at the implications of that, and perhaps that gives us much more impetus for addressing the urgency. And I always say that everything that we have in Nigeria today, wherever you touch us, the poverty, the health, the education, each issue is incredibly urgent. But I think we need to step back and not be in a hurry to fail. And we continue to hurry in the 4 years that we have of an administration to try to make the goal. And in many cases, this is generations to get to where we need to, given where we are. And so we have to plot that journey, and every 4 years say this is a milestone in that journey, and not really turn back the investments that we have in time, in resources, that we often do. So 4 years effort is turned all the way back. And I think that this administration, one of the things we're learning is that let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's actually build on some of the good things that have been done. And there are many, many things that have been done well. The challenge is how we go to scale and how we make that matter in people's lives when we talk about a huge population as ours. The focus areas that I'd like to touch on are of course, our context, the current world population, Nigeria's population data sheet, some of the factors that we see responsible in the projection of Nigeria's new population ranking, and some of the implications, and maybe one or two things that we could think about as we go into the panel discussions, and that we take away to further engage those that are not in the room today. So beginning with our context, I think it's always important that we really agree on what is the narrative that we have. Internationally, when we started to address how would we move from the MDGs to the SDGs, the first question we needed to ask was that, well, the cup was half full, and perhaps maybe even only a quarter full. But what's the narrative in 2005, 2006, where we were trying to think about what do we do going forward, and in 2012 we have, by 2015, a new framework to address. So where did we go wrong with the MDGs? What do we need to do with the SDGs? And finally, sustainable development as a concept came of age. And it came of age because we realized that we couldn't keep putting a Band-Aid on just what was a root cause that we were not addressing. So just attending to maternal health without looking at the root causes and finding the longer way of going about investing in institutions and people and connecting it with the economy, that you could not say you were growing and clap and pat yourself on the back if we were losing the number of lives we were with women in childbirth. That should say this is a failed economy, because the economy should not grow without people. And so I think sustainable development underscored that. But it also underscored that if we continued to consume and therefore having to produce to the detriment of our environment, then all three would be in problem. We would not have an economy that was sustainable, and certainly people would be at the butt end of the challenges that we have. And so I think the international discourse we had over 4 years, the first thing was to say that we agree that many issues were not there in 2000 that are now there by 2012, 2013. They included population, human rights, migration, conflict, issues that were not considered development. And I have to say that many international partners said, well, don't take everything because we won't be able to do it. But you can say that if you're not in the middle of the trouble that has everything. And I think that this is where the challenge was. How could we negotiate the impossible? Maintain ambition when you're talking about consensus in a room filled with countries across the world where development has been north-south and hasn't been about we, a global context, a united frame, a universal position on development. So I think it's important here that we really applaud the countries that did do the ambitious and did produce 17 goals. And often people say to me, which ones do you think are the most important? And for me, they're like my 17 kids. Every single one of them is special. But together they're amazing. And whatever mix you put in it should be responsive to your country. There is no one SDG that does not matter. It may not be top of your list, but as part of that mix, that gives you sustainable development. And so people shouldn't try to think that they can fix their problems by addressing them the way we did the MDGs. There is a new way of using the SDGs as a guide and an integral part of our development. It therefore means that there will be new partnerships, new ways of addressing some of the challenges we have, and we must come out of the silos. We cannot just speak in silos. Even in constituencies, even in this room where you talk about population, there are many silos. And so breaking those silos and working both with focus down but across, because that is going to be more efficient, it is going to integrate some of the issues that we believe the results will be stronger for having more sustainable in what we would like to do. On the domestic front, Africa had Agenda 2063, and that's looking forward 50 years. At its 50th anniversary, the chairperson of the AU Commission did a remarkable thing. She wrote an email to the future, and she was writing to Kwame Nkrumah to tell him in 50 years' time, looking back, what Africa had achieved. And she started by saying, this is the real trouble that we're in. These are the hard facts and things that we don't want to hear, of how we are not doing well by our people, how leadership has failed its people, and that the conflict and health and education and job issues and youth are a huge problem. But she walked back from that 50 years to show him how we had succeeded. And one of the most impressive things that she did was to have the ambition to say that Africa was in such a position that with the ACP, it was able to pull Haiti out of its problems to make it one of the top 10 economies in the world by 2050. That's ambition. Now, many will say, well, it's not realistic and you will deal with Haiti as it is today. But if you look, as Jack Kennedy did, to put a man on the moon, then you know that it's possible. So it's how we address it, how we come at it. Do we come with solutions and with action to make it happen? Or do we just procrastinate about how difficult it is and it can't be done within the time that I'm in office? Well, all I promise my people in office is to say, I'm just going to try to make sure that I leave this place better than I found it. And I think if we all do that, then I think we'll make progress and we'll see the achievements that Professor Makuju has achieved. So that brings us coming to today. President Muhammadu Buhari has been incredibly ambitious in putting 3 things on the agenda. And I want to talk about the context because talking about population outside of this is not going to make any sense. And I think what we have to realize is that we collapsed in a number of places. And so for him to have a 3-pronged focus on what he wants to do in 4 years, not only in absolutely ambitious, but likely by most accounts to be almost impossible. So he takes on the conflict head on. And for us, the conflict is Boko Haram. And remembering that what we're trying to do is to stop that conflict, but then there's reintegration. Then there is ensuring that we address the root causes, that we never ever again have a situation of Boko Haram in the northeast of Nigeria. Remembering that Boko Haram are not born. Terrorists in Nigeria were not born, they're created. And so let's address those root causes. He takes conflict head on. It doesn't take us very long to get down the road, only to find out that we have 2 more conflicts. The restlessness and militancy in the Niger Delta, and unfortunately, the farmer-herdsman tensions and conflicts that we see today. So we've added on to that, but still finding peace and looking at the root causes to every one of these. And I can tell you that in my job, I see environment as very much aligned with some of those root causes, and so look to say, how do I ensure that I can bring an end to conflict and be part of the peacemaking for that? So that's one area that we take very seriously. The second that he's taken up is the infrastructure and ensuring that we have jobs. So in everything that we do, we must ensure that if there is no infrastructure, how can you possibly sustain all the ambitions that we have? If we don't have the roads, we don't have the power, all those things that we put as a list of things against issues that cannot be unless you have that. So we were always putting the cart before the horse. And I think now we've taken a very hard decision to say there must be power, there must be roads and rail. We must be able to connect all the things that we need when we address our software. So the hardware has to be in place, otherwise the software just won't work. And that's about our people. And so I think addressing that has been one that is a challenge, but absolutely essential. The last but not least, and no one likes to talk about this because it's long-term, it's intangible, and so it's not very sexy when you want to ask people for money, and that's governance. And we talk about corruption, but actually the real root cause is how do we strengthen our institutions and our people within those institutions to deliver to over 179 million Nigerians in all 3 tiers of government, and starting from the communities. And if the institutions are weak at the foundation, they can't carry the burden that we have, no matter what wish list that we look at. And perhaps that's the most difficult, because right now we're tackling a symptom, but in fact, as you start to get to the root causes, you realize it's not on this watch that we're going to get to the end of it. But can we get back on course and hand that baton to the next administration so that we can continue to try to build the institutions where we did have capacity? This is not something we didn't have before. If I go back to my school days, everybody is talking about school feeding and they're talking about education. My first education is in a public school in Maiduguri. And Shehu Garbe was a really good school. It was a public school for civil servants' children, of which I was one. And we had really good school feeding. But it wasn't elaborate. It just made sure that nutrition was there, and that we shared it, and that it was hygienic, and that I got 6 subjects that got me through to secondary school. And that's my foundation, no matter what I have. And that happened in Nigeria, where there were birth certificates, where you were registered, where there was documentation. And maybe as we grew, and we also divided up the country administratively, we started to spread those resources too thin, and we end up in a position where institutions are so weak, they cannot deliver on the ambitions that we had in the 60s. And I think that that's something that we have to take on clearly. So the context today are these 3 things that we put on the front burner, knowing fully well that the economy is in recession. That's compounded by the global burden that we see too with economies. We're not the only ones that are facing that global downturn. It's not an excuse. It's a reason that you have to factor in to the planning and the things that you need to do going forward. And you have to get out of the box. You have to struggle. You have to suffer for the poor if you want to make a difference in their lives. You have to think ambitiously for the poor, not poorly for the poor, ambitiously. What do you want? That's what you should want for the poor. So when we discuss population, I think that this is where we have to come out of the issues that we discuss and say, what are the implications for them and how do we carry them forward? The current, in context now, the 5-6 issues that I'm just going to be reinforcing, because as I look at the smart people around this room who do this every day, I'm just going to be underscoring that yes, this matters. And so the current world population that's put at 7.4 billion is huge. It's up by 33%. And clearly, if we look through the past century, the world population has grown significantly faster, and that's across the board. The latest United Nations projections show now and indicate the population reaching 10 billion in the year 2056. And when we say we're number 3, there's a point in time, if we continue along with the trajectory, we actually end up being number 2. And so honestly, I think we have to take a really good look at why that's happening and what we can do to try to mitigate that. According to one of the President CEO of the Population Reference Bureau, I think Jeffrey Jordan, very low birth rates in Europe actually mean populations decline there. So when we're talking about world population, there's some that are going down. Australia is one, for instance, while Africa's population expecting to double, and Asia again putting another 900 million to the 5.3 billion that it has. And I think there's more so than a national issue. There's a global issue that we need to address. And when we spoke about migration on the SDG agenda, we talked about forced migration, but we also talked about planned migration. And so I think there is a reason to really address what we do across our borders going forward. And education will have a large part to do with that and the skill sets that the world as a whole will need, and not just country by country. We've had a number of messages, I think, here that when we look at some of the figures that we have with the oldest population, when we discussed in Japan the SDGs, their big issue for me was that actually they were not dying as old as they were. In fact, they were getting younger. And for them, that was a big problem. And so we were asking all sorts of different questions as to what Japan was going to be dealing with, even though it has right now the oldest population profile. And certainly others that are having that are contending with some of those issues where little things that we think are pensions no longer are available because there isn't the demographic that's coming up behind them to support that. The top 10 fertility rates in the world, sub-Saharan African countries, with nearly all above 6 children per woman, and one country even topping 7. And in Europe, we're seeing an average of 1.6. So the scale of the population challenge is quite huge. The demographic crisis clearly is real. Nigeria's population data sheet's important. Again, what I will say about the data sheet, and it's good to have the National Population Commission here, I wish the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics around. We need a data revolution. We need to understand what the baseline is, broken down right to the lowest level. Where are these people? I work with 179, somebody's working with 187 million, and then there's another figure somewhere else. Percentages. The data revolution needs to go beyond the percentages. We need to put faces to the numbers so that we can make the right investments, so that we can target these constituencies with the right messages. And we look to see exactly where are the cohorts and what are we supposed to be engaging with. And I think that for us, while we talk about the median age in Nigeria is 18, and we'll say that our youth are just about or over 70% of the population, so that's a good reason why we should be putting them top of the agenda, then we need to know, even within that youth, what are the ages, so that we can address them much more realistic, given that resources, both human and financial, are scarce these days, and we need them to see that move forward. Factors responsible for Nigeria's rapid population growth, there's several factors that we talk about here. They include the high fertility, unemployment, as somebody says here, procreation as a pastime, poverty, especially lack of economic empowerment of women, which some people consider as a root cause for rapid population growth, religious and cultural beliefs that relating to the use or non-use of certain family planning methods. And I think here we should underscore that there is no religion in Nigeria that is against the use of modern family planning methods or optimal spacing of pregnancies and births. It has to be about it has to be about our communities, it has to be about the woman's choice, it has to be about the safety of childbirth, and it has to be about those numbers which contribute to whether we have peaceful and prosperous societies. So some of the large cohorts are young persons in population with parental pressures to show fertility status through pregnancies. One of my daughters just got married, and every time she comes in, everybody looks to see, are you not pregnant yet? Are you not pregnant yet? So there is a lot of pressure. And the use of population as a determinant for national resource allocations, which was pretty serious a few years ago. And I think here, while we lay out what we have in terms of some of the factors responsible, I think the good news is that we have solutions to these, and that's what we should be talking about. Nigeria's projected new population ranking. I mean, clearly, if we do the math, and we want to see an entry point, and we want to use our population as an asset, it doesn't add up, and we have to do something about it. Because with what we have in terms of resources to invest in this asset, the math doesn't add up. We can't do it. We can't do it right now, and so therefore, expectations that we are building for everyone to reach their aspirations, many will not have those aspirations met in the next generation. And I think we can see that from what has happened to the last generation that have been said to have an education. That population has not had an education. They have passed through education, but education hasn't passed through them. They're carrying certificates, and those certificates really do not represent the abilities of that young person. So our governments have failed that generation. It's not their fault. We haven't been able to say, this is the population we have and the investments we need and what we need to do to make sure they get the very best. So I think that the new population ranking certainly comes with mixed feelings. Those that say we've increased our asset base, and those that will say, wow, what do we do about reducing this rapidly? So I think that conversation needs to be had. It's uncomfortable. We've had this over the years. I think Professor Magu talked about the signboard that was in the back room that's now up front. I think many discussions now can be up front because the implications are clear, and I think we should work very clearly with that. Implications for Nigeria becoming the third largest population by 2050, we have to ask about sustainability. Can our economies sustain the populations that we have? And if we think they can, then what are we doing about it? Because it's one thing to say it, is another thing to actually go through the facts and see in fact what the indicators are showing. And this is why I say we need a data revolution, because we need to work with those facts and figures. It's not as difficult today to really get the baselines, because technology allows us to do it. The incredible work that the Gates Foundation has done on polio shows you that we can find where everyone is and we can get to them. So I think it's very important that the implications are really out there up front, they're solid, and that we can deal with them. We know that some of these implications, and let me just run through them very quickly, is that our population growth is not keeping pace with food production. And so that's a very big food security issue. It's also a big nutrition issue. And we know the thousands of children in the Northeast that are coming back from the conflict that we're having to deal with. But let's not forget, we've been trying to deal with nutrition and food security issues in the Northwest, and they still exist. So we're needing to really understand that that's one implication. The other implication is, how do we sign on these commitments to 17 goals, knowing fully well, if we don't really address population as a cross-cutting issue, ask that question, interrogate every investment we have to ensure the line items that will support this are there, then even the SDGs will fail before they've started. So it's a really important time now that as we look at the planning, we try to address that. There are 17 goals and many, many targets. Human development itself, we will be at the base, we will be at the bottom of the run. We won't have the quality education, the quality health, the quality lives, when we say peace and prosperity. That won't happen. Human development will not happen when the population burden is as such as it is now. We have another factor, and I just say very briefly because I'm in the shadow of Professor Mabubunju here, the urban issues. When we talked about cities in the SDGs, it was a very difficult conversation to have, but by the time we showed the demographics of where most populations by 2030 would be in cities, and how are we going to deal with that, I think we've suddenly begun to wake up to, if we think some of the satellite towns that are poorly developed are bad today in FCT and Abuja, in the next 10 years they will be even worse. And I think this applies to every state capital, every population center that we're looking at. It is exacerbating conflicts, poverty, land issues. If I go to the southeast, it's one of the biggest challenges that we have when we're talking about erosion, because it is about how we use land and how we manage the resources there. So these are really a big issue. The conflicts and the youth bulge, these also are implications. We will continue. When you have youth that have no future and no hope, then we all know that they are fodder for conflicts, all sorts of conflicts. You can't have ambitious, energetic young people sitting down doing nothing with no future. It's not possible. So therefore, I think we need to show some of these implications, and I think that then speaks to the hearts and minds that take the decisions. Often when people read the papers and the reports and the research, it's just words on paper. We have to find a way to allow them to jump out at you so that you see a statistic that really does have a picture to it. So on moving forward, I would say that underscoring three things that I think are incredibly important. We must take context into consideration at all times, whether it is federal, state, local government, business context, civil society. Context matters. Get it right and then the response will be sustainable. The second is to acknowledge that this is not all about government. It's a collective responsibility. The things that you and I do on a daily life, when I leave my office, what I do as a private citizen matters. And we have to take a collective responsibility. I can't keep bringing regulatory laws and into place that are punitive, or some maybe are incentivized. Say, for instance, let me talk about environment, to stop firewood, because we're losing 1.5 million trees every single day. And that's not sustainable. That's like shaving Nigeria's head. And so if we say, okay, so I'm going to stop all those people from bringing firewood into Abuja and ban it in Abuja. I've stopped livelihoods because I haven't given them an alternative. If it's logging, I've not put in the checks and balances I need for why it should go out and the incentives why it should stay in. And that's all the things about other people. But then I should look at myself in the mirror. And I took the opportunity to do that because I'm the Minister of Environment, and then said, wow, okay, actually once a year I use firewood. Guilty as charged is Ramadan, and I want to do sadaqah. And so I want to cook what is beyond my elite kitchen with this gas cooker. So I go outside, Halima and Fatima, they make kose for lots of people, and I use firewood. So I decided not to use firewood. Stopped using it, went to gas, still outside. What were the implications of that? Well, from a selfish point of view, it costs more, it cooked slower, and so therefore, as we say in Hausa, the kose was shabmai. I used more oil. It didn't taste the same. So, you know, it was really just not very good, as if you just want to be very good elite. But the big cost that then I appreciated was much more important, was the fact I had taken for granted, because they don't complain, that Fatima and Halima, their eyes were better off because they didn't have smoke in them, and their chest did not hurt anymore. That's the cost we need to look at, not the other bit, which, yes, is uncomfortable and we have to move a couple of paces, but can you compare that to the cost of health? So in the same way, the implications of the decisions we take on population, as we look not to bother about dishing out money for somebody who has come from the village to say, can you please pay for my rago because, you know, akwesuna. You need to say to them, you know, how many children is it you have? And how is it that you're feeding? I mean, just, you know, that's something that's an obligation on me as a person, not somebody else to pay for it. We need to have starting those uncomfortable questions so that, you know, yes, let's get past when they will tell you that that's what God said. And so you're made to feel guilty that you're doing something against God. No, you're not. So each individual reaction you have can also have a massive result on what we talk about here. And that's what I mean about collective responsibility. And say these things when you're not, I'm here having this lecture on population. Somebody's probably saying, why is the Minister of Environment doing this? This is not her mandate. As a person, is my mandate. So let's get out of those sides. and then recognizing that we need leadership at all levels. Let's applaud leadership. The only thing or person, only thing 100% in life is God. Every one of us has failings. So let's not pull down leadership for the failings it has, but let's reinforce it for the strengths that it can give us so that we can achieve the things that we need to. We're too ready to pull it down, and we need leadership at all levels. It's not just about the president. Because if it was about President Muhammadu Buhari, we'll all be clean by now. But it isn't. It's about every single one of us. And I think that that's an important aspect of the leadership. The second, I think, one of the things that we can do about this, our planning needs to be ambitious, it needs to be integrated, inclusive, and responsive. So the plans that we have, interrogate them with those questions. And I think that Nigeria now is beginning to develop its next long-term plan, building on the last one. Any way that we can get into budget and planning to inform that decision-making, and I can promise you that whatever comes out of here, I will take it along with the Nigerian Population Commission into government to make sure that your voices are heard and the practice that you've had is renewed. The Nigerian government needs to begin urgent advocacy and public enlightenment. The need to know, and to know at the lowest levels, not just up here in Abuja. And I think that, we should take advantage that we do have the National Orientation Agency, and it does exist at the grassroots. And the MDGs were successful because we use them. So using our agencies, we will do the best that we can, but engage with them yourselves, those that are here outside of it. Our royal fathers have been very good at being able to communicate to our people, and I think that this is where we can join hands with government who've got infrastructure to go further. So I think the need to know is important, and that we should try all forms of exchanging that knowledge. And when we talk about representation, when you leave the room, please go back and tell the people you represent what happened. Because one of the things government faces is that every time we come to a new audience, they say they didn't know. But their representatives were in the room when we discuss these things, and we really need to give government some credit. We cannot have everyone in the room, but by having representatives that are truly representative, then we have everyone in the room. So please help us to do that job of getting out there. I think with civil society, we must find, Professor Mupagunju told us that we're going to have something constructive or destructive. I think that we need to be disruptive. I think we need to really think about what we need to do to be fit for purpose. And so therefore, civil society, give us feedback that not only tells us what we're not doing, but how we should be doing things better. And think about it not just from your perspective, but how it fits in the whole. And I keep saying the whole, because this is much bigger than what it used to be before, because we're tackling sustainable development, not just any siloed approach to development. And I think that on population, the voices of civil society are going to be incredibly important in actually underscoring some of the realities that we have on ground. And I hope that our government agencies, when we look at data, will include them through that, so that we can see better how to manage the crisis that we have. We do need the early warning system, and I think we're getting that from the United Nations, that often through its news center tells us what's happening, and therefore it means that we can plan ahead. And I think that that's more difficult to do, because sometimes planning ahead, you won't get the credit for it. Can we get past credits and think of legacies and what we put in terms of building blocks to succeed? We've congratulated a number of people on the floor today because they've left a legacy. They did some really good work, and it's because of them we're able to do what we can do today. Communicating, not scaremongering. I think there are implications. I think it is a crisis, and like with climate change, if you scare people, they will just go back into their shells. But I think young people, of whom this is about, have wonderful ways of communicating. They tweet, they go across on Facebook, they do things I don't even understand. But I'm all willing to learn. And I make big mistakes on Twitter because I sometimes say what I think, and then I get this huge avalanche back that tells me, you can't get away with that. So I think we should find ways of communicating this issue in a way that shows people as an asset, and therefore planning incredibly important, to protect those people and give them the wealth, the aspirations, the rights that they should have. And young people, you should start that movement online, because we know you don't walk the streets anymore. So if you're online, walk the internet and really put those messages through. And I think government now ought to be opening up to that, because there is no secret in the world anymore. There's no secret. People look for Chatham House rooms to have a discussion. There's no secret. So let's actually just understand from that point of view, the challenge is harder because everyone knows or is likely to know, and use it for positive feedback. And I challenge young people to please do that. Political will, the government of Nigeria has got to pay particular attention to the effective management of its own population, and so we need to show the political will for this. I'm going to go back and say to the President, this is what I heard you thought in the barracks when you saw children running around. I think it's more than the soldiers' barracks, probably the police barracks as well, and every barracks that there is, but political will. We have parliaments now. At that time, that was military rule. Now we have parliaments, and I think we need to go into those parliaments, and maybe we could get some good advice from people like Honorable Saudu to how do we challenge them and bring out the necessary legislative tools that can help us to do this. We've had a number of acts on child protection, and we need to go further for that. I think climate change and population are a big issue. As I said before, we've seen that in terms of what is happening with climate change, reducing the space for farming, bringing the tensions with our herdsmen. We've also seen it with erosion. We see it in the Niger Delta, where sea rises are also causing huge population constraints. And I think we have to make those links so people see that this is, it is also about consumption. What do you need and not what you want? Lifestyles and livelihoods, the tensions between the two. And when we did put the 17 SDGs together, there was a big discussion about, where do we want to be? If we want to be like the consumptive societies that are there, then there's not a sustainable path to reducing emissions for saving the world in the future. So we have to have that conversation. I'm coming down to last two things that I'd like to talk about, education. And here we say one of the critical ways to prevent the negative consequence of rapid population growth is about educating the girl child. Let me go out of that. I think we all know that. And we've been plugging away at this for decades. And we've made progress insufficient. And so really I would like us to see putting boys on the agenda. There must be he for she. There must be men and boys for women and girls. It's about partnerships. It's a difficult way to go, and we all say that we're oppressed. Well, clearly we've made some progress on this high table, and I want to thank Kole for making that happen. There are more women on this table. There wasn't yesterday when I went to my high table, I was the only one. So you're like that lady justice, and you're the scales of two sides. We all know that we can say, blessed is he amongst women, but we can't say that about blessed is she amongst men. So we ought to try to change that. But it's about education. And education, everyone has a right. Every child has a right to education. We say especially girls because they're not there, but they're beginning to be there. Let's not leave the boys behind lest we have another challenge of coming to educate the boys, because we've seen what has happened in cases of Boko Haram, and I think that we cannot afford that. On the health issue, everyone would think that this is a health issue because we're talking about the contraceptives that are available. But I think it's, it has to be about lives, and lives matter, every single one. When people talk about our statistics, think about the one mother that has lost her life that shouldn't have if they had the necessary institutions in place, the necessary human resources, the education, all of those come, and I think it's important. Last but not one, I want to underscore again the importance of the international agreements that we sign on to. I saw this in the negotiations. The SDGs have negotiated what was almost impossible. We have ambitious agenda. We didn't take everything we had with all the conventions we had before, and so I don't think we should forget what we left behind in some of them, but let's actually really push behind what we have here and domesticate those commitments that we've made. That means that we need to strengthen our partnerships domestically, but with our international partners, and we need to get in the driving seat. We need to get in the driving seat. It takes some effort, but do it. Because without doing it, you will continue coming back again, because you won't have recognized the destination you've gone to because you didn't have a part in planning it. And I think you need to get to be aware of what our priorities are. And we all need today to become more fit for purpose. I say that to our international partners, I say that to business, to civil society, and especially government. Ask the questions of how we become more fit for purpose to address the population challenge. Finally, I hope we can continue to use this forum to inform the ambition of what government needs to have. It's a call to action for that ambition that we can implement. It's about our planning, but it's even more about our investments and how we can begin to do that much more efficiently. And that we then take care and we see that, yes, population, as it should be, an asset, empowered, invested in, good for everyone. And that's what I think we would like to see. So on that note, I thank all of you and I look forward to the
I think she deserves a standing ovation, ladies and gentlemen.
Did I get a pass mark?
Wow. Can we keep clapping? It's been a time of a lot of mental listening. Now we want to do an energizer. Wherever you are, imagine that you have an imaginary pen in your hand. Okay. Can you write, I love Nigeria. I love Nigeria. Have you written that? Yes. Put that imaginary pen in your right armpit. If you are right-handed, if you are left-handed, in the left armpit. Do you know what you write? Write, I love the Nigerian woman. Have you done that? Finally, put that pen in your belly. Have you done that? Right. What? I love Amina Mohammed.
Oh no. I'm going to sit down.
Mohammed. Please take your seats. Now we are going to the panel discussion. I would like you to keep your powders dry. Please write down your questions. I'm sure you have a lot of burning questions you're going to ask the minister after her lecture. But we want to take all the questions and answers after the panel conversations. And the first to be invited to the podium is Professor Douglas Mwabo, who is going to talk about population, its structure, and impact on development. Professor Mwabo, please.
The chairman of today's occasion, the person of Professor Akin Aboji, and the chairman of the organizing committee and the worthy participants. I'm supposed to be talking on the overview of the structure of the population. These are the developments. Let me start by saying that before we talk about the structure of the population, we need to look at the sources of the population figures, which we know comes from the census exercise. The census exercise of this country in the past, actually, for me, has had its own challenges and problems, resulting in what I may say unreliability of the information we get. But I must commend the past organizers of the last census of 2006 towards a huge improvement on what we used to have. Because before then, we were getting a lot of duplications of figures, omissions, and the rest of them. Most census exercises in this country, for me, are politicized. Most communities want to have an inflated figure. They will do everything possible within their reach to ensure that they have a large size. And if this is allowed all through, you are sure that what you have as a population may not truly reflect the population of the country. However, in the last census, there were checks and balances, and even though you may still have some errors here and there, the errors were minimized. So I wouldn't say that the errors are completely eliminated. As we prepare for the next census, which will have been this year, my advice, the first instance, is that the planners should take a look at the way it's going to go. And make sure we come up with a figure that reflects the population. Because what we are doing is the use of figures which are mainly projected from unreliable information. Most of the data we have obviously have its own problems, but we don't have any choice. Now, if we look at the growth of the population of this country, with a growth rate of between 3% and 3.5%, if these rates are to be allowed to remain up to 2050, it is expected that the population of this country will be 514.75 million and 612 million respectively. That's with the growth rates of 3% and 3.5%. This figure, to me, presents a very serious challenge, and it has serious social and economic implications. Because the population of 612 million in a country like ours requires that the government have to do a lot to be able to meet with the needs of everybody. If you look at the rates again, even with all the programs put in place, family planning program and the rest of them, and the reduction in mortality rate, the total fertility rate of this country, well, for the urban area is 6.2, and then 4.7 for the urban areas. What it means is that we're expecting an average of 6 children for the women of reproductive age in urban rural area as against 4.7 for the urban area. This to me is very high comparatively, because even in our neighboring countries like Ghana and the rest of them, their total fertility rates have really come down. It's no longer, they have put measures in place to bring down the fertility rate. And that's why I say our own still remains high. Internal migration, especially from rural to urban areas, is one of the central demographic themes of modern Nigeria currently. It is therefore apparent that a significant reduction in the child dependency ratio will to a large extent release resources for investments in other investment programs. Now, employment creation is one of the greatest developmental issues facing this country. With an increasing high fertility and lowered availability of job spaces, which is even compounded by the current recession experienced by the country, a replacement level fertility of 2 children per woman will close this gap. Well, one of our speakers was talking, you did mention that we are placed 7th population-wise in this country, and that so many countries have succeeded in bringing down their fertility level. For countries like China and India, using specific approach incentives, sterilization, and the rest of them. We have adopted family planning as a way of bringing down fertility level here, but even then, the acceptability of family planning is in question because some religious groups still don't believe in some of the family planning methods. So we now ask ourselves, what do we do to be able to ensure that the fertility level is reduced in this country, apart from just applying family planning? So I think that this country needs to look inwards to find out ways of reducing our fertility level, possibly to a replacement level, which of course has to be gradual because the transition, demographic transition of this country still places us at the second stage. And when it's in the second stage, usually we know it will take a very long time before we get to where we're going. So I will suggest that the various organs in population issues should continue as we have done today to meet and look at the various things we're supposed to do to get down the population of this country. Thank you very much.
We can get his
I'm welcoming Priscilla to the podium now to give us her presentation. You have 10 minutes, please. We'll warn you 5, 2, and 1.
Good morning, all. I'd like to stand on existing protocol. I'm told it's midday. Good afternoon. Next slide, please. I'd like to recognize Prof. I'm very pleased to be here today. We're going to be talking on positioning young people to achieve demographic dividends and sustainable development in Nigeria. And we'll just quickly look at the outline, the key concepts, potentials of youth in achieving the demographic dividend and sustainable development, positioning youth for the achievement of demographic dividend and sustainable development, the challenges and way forward. We can see the graph there, percentage distribution of the Nigerian population. That information is then it can actually spell doom for us. We have to put that at the back of our mind. Sustainable development is defined in the Broadland report as development that meets the needs and aspirations of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The sustainable development is the organizing principle for sustaining finite resources necessary to provide for the needs of future generations of life in the present. So it means planning for the future today. And for me, today is now. Because oftentimes we think we have a lot of time, but we actually don't have it. Young people are central to national and global development agenda. The national and global experiences, particularly in the context of the MDGs, with young people participating in many of the consultative fora and agenda-setting events, re-emphasize the need for young people to be involved at all levels of development activities for effective results. I'd like to appreciate the United Nations Population Fund, the MacArthur Foundation, and several development agencies that were very critical to the involvement of young people in this transition process. They ensure that young people's voices from the local to the state to the national in this country were engaged in all through these processes. Quickly, I'd like to give this phrase from the 2030 Agenda. The Millennium Development Goals provided an important framework for development, and significant progress has been made in a number of areas, but the progress has been uneven, particularly in Africa, least developed countries. This new agenda builds on the MDGs and seeks to complete what this did not achieve. particularly in reaching the most vulnerable. I look at the hall oftentimes when we come for meetings like this, and you begin to see representatives from all over the country. And you look at the young people who are being represented here, you begin to look for those that are really vulnerable, those in the rural communities, those that are marginalized, and you hardly find them. But some other people give resources to ensure that those people are here. That's quickly about the SDGs. Positioning young people to achieve DD and SDGs. Next two slides, please. Sexual and reproductive health and rights. We need to know that young people's sexual and reproductive health and rights must be prioritized as a means to address our population issues. We can't run away from it. Issues of sexual and reproductive health are central to population development. Sexual violence in Nigeria. We need to address the pervasiveness of sexual violence, which is closely linked to sexual violence, is the prevalence of drug abuse. We need to know what our rating of mental health services, our post-trauma services for survivors of sexual violence. We have the recent survey that was joined with UNICEF on the violence against children survey in Nigeria, and we were shocked by the outrageous results and data that was brought in. But day in, day out, these results are just brought in and actions are not put in place. And just recently we're hearing another news about the sexual violence that was going on at the IDP camps, in some of the camps, and they are really worrisome for us. We need to know that family planning goals can be achievable and is central and integral to population growth and development. But there are key issues that we need to ask ourselves. How do we integrate all these issues? Raising healthy families, which include mentally healthy families. Nigeria needs to look at the requirement for young people's mental health. We go to a lot of forums, but a lot of attention is not paid to a mental health of young people. And you need to understand that when you say family is planned, you are thinking about the future. Do we want a future generation of people who are mentally unstable? Because with the current rate of drug abuse in the country and the sexual violence going on and the post-trauma services that are rendered, then it's a factor that we need to consider. Conclusively, we must leverage the development and diplomacy efforts. We must have stronger participation in all the SDG processes and leadership. We must be involved in evidence-based advocacy. We must engage in strong partnership, leaving no youth behind, and have targeted actions. We must be result-oriented, which means we need periodic progress reviews of our roles as young people in Nigeria. There are several young people already doing amazing work, but we need to do more. Conclusively, if Nigeria leaves its youth behind, then reaping demographic dividend will become impossible. Nigeria needs a paradigm shift about its young people and their development and gender issues. Thank you.
The chairman of the occasion, other distinguished members of the high tables, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. What I tried to do, because if I'm going to talk about maternal health, the impact of maternal health or rapid population growth and its impact on maternal health and adolescent health, I don't think an hour will be enough for me. So what I've tried to do is just tease out some important facts and then just place them on the slides and we can talk about them. And the good thing is that the Honorable Minister, as well as our Honorable Chairman, have actually done the job because they've mentioned virtually all the impact of rapid population growth. All I'm going to do is just tease out the health impact and just reiterate it so that we can move forward. First slide. Now, this was mentioned as one of the effects of rapid population will be a young population. Just as our professor has said, there is going to be a dynamic change of our population structure. So there will be more young population. They said that in the year 2050, we're going to have almost, how many percent he mentioned? That will be the young population. So we've got to consider that. High dependency ratio was also mentioned
by one of the previous speakers. And if you have a high dependency ratio, it means you have more consumers than producers. More people are consuming and less people are producing. And then, of course, you're going to be having low resources at the end of the day to cater for the population. And this will go to increasing the poverty level of the population. And in fact, the Honorable Minister mentioned the issue of decaying infrastructure if we continue at the rate at which we're doing without doing anything about it. Now, what will be the impact of all this different, and of course she mentioned conflict, she mentioned the issue of food security, insecurity. These are all things that will happen if we allow the rapid population growth without considering what the impacts will be. Now, the major impact as far as maternal health is concerned is the issue of high fertility rate and therefore the high-risk pregnancies. Once you have high fertility rate, you end up with a high-risk pregnancies. Now, what are these high-risk pregnancies? These are pregnancies that occur too early. And therefore, when you have high-risk pregnancies occurring too early, you end up with morbidities like eclampsia, obstructed labor, the terrible morbidity of vesicovaginal fistula. You also have what we call the too frequent pregnancies. And this added with the food insecurity, you end up with anemia, you end up with malnutrition in the mother, in the children, you end up with child mortality, you end up with postpartum hemorrhage. We also have what we know as the too many pregnancies. You have high fertility rate, you end up with too many pregnancies, high fertility. And at the end of the day, we all know one of the most important causes of maternal mortality is postpartum hemorrhage that occurs in people that have delivered so many babies. You end up with ruptured uteruses. The too late pregnancies, you're still 40, 45, and you're still having babies. You end up with hypertension, with diabetes in pregnancy, with cardiac disease in pregnancy, ending up with morbidities and mortality. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all this will lead to increasing maternal mortality and morbidity. Now, other effects are, because of decaying infrastructure, government might not be able to cater for our health. What will happen? More out-of-pocket expenditure for health. And we all know what is the state of our human resource. We talked about it this morning, and we're talking about tax shifting. Now, we're trying to handle the population right now. If you allow it to be more than what it is right now, what we're having is going to be really a dearth of human resource for health. Right now, we have 2 doctors in the worst population, in the worst state per 1,000 to 50 doctors per 1,000 in the better states like Abuja. And then midwives 6 per 1,000 to 95 per 1,000. This will give us weak health system, increasing morbidity and mortality. Now we know the reality. We know that Nigeria contributes 14% of maternal death right now in the world, just after India. And we know that the life risk of any woman dying in Nigeria is 1 out of 30, which is 1 out of 3,400 in developed countries. We know where Nigeria stands. Sorry, you're not moving the slides. Oh yeah, next slide, yes. This is where Nigeria stands like 4th from the end. We're only better than Mali, Malawi, Afghanistan, and Haiti as far as maternal mortality rates are concerned. What about the effect on child health? We know that our infant mortality rate right now is 69 per 1,000. 1 in every 15 Nigerian child will die before the age of 1. And we know what our vaccination rates are, which are still low. We know the under 5 maternal mortalities, under 5 mortalities. Now, with rapid population growth, what will happen with food insecurity, with weak health system? We're going to have malnutrition, we're going to have death from communicable diseases, we're going to have death from vaccine-preventable diseases, and we're going to have more neonatal, perinatal, and under 5 mortalities. What about its effects on adolescents? Because we want to look at maternal, child, and adolescent. We've talked about urban migration. We hear that by the year 2050, we're going to have like 75% of our population in the urban cities. Now, what will happen? We're going to have more slums, because it's better for you to be in the rural area than to be in an urban slum. So you're going to have more slums, you're going to have more overcrowding, you're going to have, due to the urban migration. Now, in terms of adolescents, what will be the effects? More sexually transmitted diseases, more HIV/AIDS. We have done so well in tackling the problem of HIV/AIDS, but if we don't do something about our population growth, we're going to have a problem of HIV coming back to us. More unplanned pregnancies, more unwanted pregnancies, more unsafe abortions, and more adolescent pregnancies. Now, all these have effects. All these have effects. Adolescent pregnancies give us a cycle of poverty. You go from pregnancy, poverty, back to another pregnancy, and on it's going to be a cycle of poverty. We're going to have more maternal mortalities and morbidities from unsafe abortion, and we're going to have more morbidities from the unsafe abortions, such as adolescent pregnancies, such as vesicovaginal fistulas, infertility, school dropouts, and substance abuse. These are all going to be some of the effects on adolescent health as far as rapid population growth is concerned. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in simple terms, rapid population growth will lead to poverty and poor health system, leading to increasing maternal and child morbidity and mortality. The Honorable Minister has mentioned the way forward. She mentioned starting from leadership to collective efforts to planning to looking at our resources and human capital. So she has set the way forward. I hope I'm not just mentioned the bad things of maternal health and ended up that way. We can remember what she said as far as the way forward is. Thank you very much.
Powerfully driven. I didn't hear your powerful claps. Thank you, Hadiza. I think we've come to the end of the panel presentations. We're now going to do questions and answers. For time, instead of 25 minutes, we're going to spend 15. I think that's fair, isn't it? So that we'll be able to catch up from the 30 minutes we undoubtedly lost in the morning. To make it very quick, I would like all the people who want to ask questions, if you're coming from the two sides of the distance, please stand on the line on the aisle here. If you're here, stand here and here. So we'll take you as you come out. Number one, stand there. Number two, stand, let the queue behind you, Haji. Anybody that wants to ask questions, please come out and stand on the aisle. We'll bring the microphone to you there. Remember, we have only 15 minutes, so your questions should be short. No comments, questions.
No comment, okay.
Oh, comment, please, comment.
Thank you very much. I just want to reply to the whole lecture, and I'm happy that the National Population Commission is there, is here. I think we're getting confused somewhere. Why I say that is that if you look at the determining factor for share of national fund, when you come to the fund allocation, one of the criteria is population. So when we have census, everybody is teaching that my population will go down because my resources will go down. So what is the Population Commission doing about this? Because if the population, the number of people in a state is a determinant factor for the allocation of funds to that state, how can the governor of my state want my population to be reduced? So I think you have to, there's a mix up there. I think the National Population Commission have to address it. It's either use development as an issue, use as an issue, anything, but not number. The moment number is being maintained, there is no way the population of this country will go down. Thank you.
Okay. Next question.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. So my question is kind of from all the presentations of today.
Self and your organization.
Okay, my name is Dr. Amina APLS from a pastoral implementer. So my question is that from most of the discussions, we have seen the importance of integration, especially the fact that family planning has a role to play, both maternal health and all other SDGs, for example. How do we think as a group that is advancing family planning, what do we want to do and what do we think should be done for integration? Because I think that now we should really move beyond the silos, as even the Honorable Minister said, so that one, our constituents will be really happy that they're kind of working on their needs, because when you go to the field, some of them will say, oh, that's not my problem. Family planning is not my problem. My children are dying. So what, from anyone can actually answer, what should we do better in integrating family planning with other services, not only health, but the whole developmental issue?
Okay, thank you. Give the gentleman over there. Please, your name, your organization.
Thank you very much. My name is Nora Tali, representing IPLS, State Coordinator, IPLS, Actually, my own concern is about the youth. We are talking about we have about 119 youth here with us. But there is vulnerable, is a certain group of youth that is, I think, seem to be maybe forgotten. And I don't know, is there any plan for those vulnerable youth? That is, we call them street youth. So that is the problem. Because then some say, they get married, they make all kinds of sexual abuse, they make kind of relationship with other girls on the street. So is there any plan for them? Is there any program or maybe plan for such vulnerable youth? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Asma Ojola from the Center for Women and Adolescent Empowerment, Yola. I've been listening keenly since yesterday, and I know that sometimes there is a problem with discussing about traditional birth attendants. We have not mentioned them, and we're talking about going to rural communities, and I know that if we miss this crucial sector, we're not going to reach a lot of people. And I'm saying this because a couple of years ago I was doing research in Gombe and realized how powerful traditional birth attendants are. If you skin me alive, I will not tell you any traditional birth attendants in Yola, but the ones I met in Gombe made me feel that traditional birth attendants are really important, because even if a mother-in-law cannot allow a wife to go to hospital, a traditional birth attendants will order the husband and he will do so. So I think they're a category that we should stop overlooking if we're doing so. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Oyi. I'm also representing education as a vaccine. I'm also representing young people. First, I want to applaud this meeting. Apart from this that you're doing, apart from the family plan, it has opened my eyes as a young person, as a young woman, to be able to see women doing great and amazing things. You don't get to see that a lot in Nigeria. And my question is for the Honorable Minister who she left. One of the points she made was that CSO should give adequate information and data to them. But the thing is, we always have the data, we always have the information, but they don't want to listen to us. When we go to them for meeting, nobody is around, and they ask us to drop the data, and then when we do, we don't get any feedback. So what is the government's plan for that?
My name is Konosuya Alawali.
No more people coming to the aisle. I think Julie will be the No more people coming to the aisle. Julie will be the last person that we will take. Thank you very much.
My name is Konosuya Alawali from Olabisi from Banjo University. My question cuts across. We can, as much as can help answer it. We're talking about youth in a large part of the gathering, and I want to know, are there facilities, policies that engages our university students? I've come to see that it's easier for university students to relate with those people, the out-of-school students, the ones that we're trying to reach out to, instead of bringing these, the more elder people to come and talk to them. So, are there facilities to engage a central facility that covers maybe all public universities to engage the youth in their communities? Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Juliana Nathaniel, and I work for the DFID MSCH2 program. Mine is just a comment. And that comment, has to do with us, considering a number of things, that we have, said in this particular place. One of them, that I want to talk about, has to do with the policies, that, we have in the country. Somebody just, made mention, of the fact that, we have, policies that support that a man or a woman or a family, should have 4 children. You see, the policy is not clear about what needs to be done, whether it is 1 man to 4 children or 1 woman to 4 children and so on and so forth. Now, apart from that, I think that, she also talked about, the policy, whereby, allocation, is made to, states, based on the population of the country. These are truth. And I think that, as Nigerians, that we really need to be clear about what we want, in terms of the policies, because the policies that, we put in place, are working against family planning, okay? Because if we are not sure of what we want and we have not declared exactly what we want, it's obvious, that, people will do things just the way they want it to be done. I think that China and some other countries were clear about what they wanted. They said 1 child, and that was, our policy, and it was very clear to all. So I just want to say that as people that want Nigeria to move forward, that we should be clear about what we want in terms of what needs to be done for us to be able to bring down the population.
But you see, Indonesia was...
Okay, now last gentleman here.
The way the Quran supports family planning.
Yeah.
And so they can move ahead and everybody understood.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Law.
Messages.
I work with others.
The family planning save lives, we live. But the only problem is
my interest and my question is directed at the national population.
Provided that we can take in messages the way it will.
I'm a health manager.
And then they will also
health planner.
I do believe that no one
and programmer
employ maternal mortality in this community.
When the minister, honorable minister, was talking, she was saying, where are the numbers? The problem with our census figures put a lot of stress on the health managers of this country. I was expecting to hear what plans MPOPC has in the expected census coming to take care and make sure that we get or expect to get reliable data. A situation where we have programs and plan for them, we have 100%. And by the time you are implementing, you are blocking 150% coverage. We look at it as a serious embarrassment. And it disorganizes and disrupts the planning process. Forecasting is very difficult to make. You can't even make a definite budgetary demand from the political class. I desire to hear, what do we hope to get from the expected population, be it in 2018 or after? This knowledge will help Nigerians to support in the momentum for your looking for resources. Because if I know that there are technologies that you are planning to deploy to make sure that I will be able, my colleagues, have reliable information to plan with, some of us will be your advocates. Thank you very much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll give them a good round of applause for the wonderful questions. We'll invite the panelists to make their contribution. But before then, I want to recognize 2 royal fathers here. I have Eze, who has been here with us since yesterday. Eze Abdul Fatai, Chairman Motume 3 of 4 of Umo 4 Kingdom, Ogutalan in Imo State. We recognize you, sir. Thank you very much for being with us. These are the mouthpieces of the communities, what they say the communities do. And then just before the questions we have concluded, another giant In fact, most of you don't know that this was my senior house officer as a young house officer in 1980 at APU Teaching Hospital. Now he's a royal father. And His Eminence, His Royal Highness, the member of Shonga, Dr. Yahaya Haliru. Can you please give him a good round of applause? This gentleman has brought the community health insurance scheme into Nigeria. Practicalize this, there is evidence, we have no reason not to make it work. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll give the panelists who will take the first shot. Okay.
I'm going to attempt to okay. Yes, okay. I think there are like 3 questions that I can attempt to answer. One of them is the issue of TBA. The issue of TBA training and integrating TBA into maternal health is a really controversial area. And it's been in the forefront for the last 30 years, since 1970s that we started Safe Motherhood. Now, a lot of studies have shown that actually training TBAs to take over the work of a midwife would never achieve the goal that we're looking for. But then there are very important group that we must recognize, that our women respect and the community respect. So what we need to do is integrate them in such a way that they will assist, referring or bringing these patients at the end of the day to skilled birth attendants. Because the issue here is skilled birth attendant. But you can use them to train women on other aspects of health, like cleanliness, like good feeding, and so on and so forth. And then for them to be able to carry these patients or to refer this patient to a skilled birth attendant. In their needs of emergency, they're the first people they're going to be calling. So in that case, they should know their way to the hospital. They should know their way to a skilled birth attendant. They will be the ones that can be the link between the community as well as the health facility. That's how we can use the TBAs. And there are a lot of organizations that are using TBAs in that way. But forget about training them to take over the work of a midwife. They will never be able to do that. The other issue is the issue of integration. Yes, doctor. One of the things that the Honorable Minister said was that there must be collective efforts. You cannot do it just single-handedly like the vertical programs that we have. You cannot just do family planning and think you're going to reduce maternal mortality or you're going to have an impact on population growth. You must integrate. You must have collective efforts. It's education, it's nutrition, it's environment, it's health, it's economy, everything, every aspect of development has to go together. That is why this time around, even our MDG that was talking about only 8 MDG goals, now we have 17, because they've realized that there was other things that were not carried along in the first 15 years. So this time around, we're carrying them along. So we must integrate, we must collaborate with each other to get to where we want to be. Then you mentioned the issue of I think the rest of the things will be handled by the youth lady. Okay, I just want to quickly respond to the young man that asked about sending of adults to universities to go speak to them, especially on issues of sexual and reproductive health. In the past 10 years, from my own work at Brave Heart Initiative and working with Society for Family Health, I know they have a lot of models, the one we call the peer education models. They even have what they call the peer education plus. So we've actually had young people working with fellow young people. Education as a Vaccina here. There are several other young people doing amazing work in that aspect. And we have also trained what we call out-of-school young people to reach out to fellow out-of-school young people. So this idea of having one adult coming to a university campus to reach out to others. I know for the World Bank project on HIV prevention, we've also had that of young people. You have in school to in school to out of school, out of school to out of school. They are actually in existence. If you don't have it in your place or you don't have much information, you can contact me after this forum and we can speak about it. Then for state integration and partnership, for young people, we need to do more work within ourselves. So we need to create that linkage between the urban young person and the rural young person. There was a statement that was made today that you better live in a rural community than be in an urban slum. I go to a lot of forum and people are like, Priscilla, you live in a village and you are coming out the village to Abuja. I say, yes, I'm an international village girl. But a lot of people run away from the village. Why leave the village and become a dweller of an urban slum? So we need to build those linkages as young people, working around every sector that relates to us.
International village youth. It's very interesting. As an urban planner, we see the rural areas as a power to enabling the cities work. But coming from the National Population Commission, there are two issues raised. Honorable Saudat Sani mentioned the issue of population versus use for revenue allocation, right? We at MPC, we always want to de-emphasize population for revenue allocation. That is not our main focus. We see population as census, as generating data for national development. We do it this way. Nigerian census, from the last one and to this one coming, is called National Census Housing and Census National Census and Housing Survey. So the emphasis is not only on demographic data, on human beings, but also on housing. Because inside that document, we want to generate the output being not only the number of people, but the type of people, the age-sex ratio, the ages, the income levels of each household, the household size, right? And including their income. Because the questionnaire, we have about 58 questionnaire, the one that's going to be approved by the National Council. We have 58 questions. And in that question, we have a lot of issues that we raise to ask each respondent. And most important, about housing. We talk about the type of house one is living, the household is living. The number of rooms, the facilities inside that house, the number of toilets, and all other facilities. The man from Abia who asked the issue about health issues. You see, from the generation info data generated from health, from the housing census, will tell us the health conditions within each environment. And that can be used by the Minister of Environment or Minister of Health to talk about, address issues of outbreak of diseases. For example, the last census, we found out that in a particular area in Adamawa State, about 1 million houses use pit latrines. 1 million in population, about 3 million, they use pit latrines. And those pit latrines don't have water. The issue is therefore is when you want to talk about areas where you address areas of cholera, you have to address those areas where they have pit latrines or some living defecate in the open, about 850,000. So these are the areas for health planners can use to address the areas of vision. In addition to this, every 4 years, we collaborate with Federal Ministry of Health and other agencies to carry what we call National Demographic Health Surveys. And this data is generated and placed at the disposal of all users. They can use for their health planning. So in MPC, we don't want to emphasize the issue of just number of people so they can use for our state to come and argue for what we want for this thing. That is not our emphasis. In addition to this, daily we carry out what we call birth registration. Birth registration times that each child, every minute a child is born, that child should be registered. When you register that child, you give that child an identity. He becomes a bona fide Nigerian citizen. Now, right now, we are about 30 to 40% achievement. Once we're able to get more than about 80%, the emphasis on annual or 10-year census will be emphasized, because with that data on birth and death registration, we are able to plan and get our population data much more accurately. Now, talking about the next census, we are going to use biometric census. And to do that, we have to establish what we call an enumeration area demarcation for all the areas. Once we have that data frame, and what is an EAD? We're cutting the country into small units, whereby an enumerator can be able to cover within the census period. And all those units include number of houses. They are all numbered. They are recorded and digitalized. So we have a central data whereby the number of houses each community is recorded. So that when you have problem of, we don't have this data, and you say our population is not correct, we just refer you to the national data, and you can go and check yourself so you can verify. The number of houses cannot be faked. You cannot increase or reduce the number of houses in a particular area because we are using satellite imagery for that particular period to capture the number of houses in that community. And with that, you can know how many households are in that place. So we're working towards having an efficient, credible, and reliable census, which can be used for a lot of things, with less emphasis on using it just for number of people to count for the national cake. I think that's better for us in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
You mean to conclude?
Yeah, pattern short, sir.
No, what do you want a concluding statement?
Yes, sir. Concluding statement, sir.
Well, let me thank the organizers for this very interesting session. I like to go back to my own experience. Yeah.
We have a constituency that must speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You wanted declaring 25.5 million Nigerians with disability, not to pick a word here. Thank you very much. I am M.M. Musa. I work with Joint National Association of Persons Living with Disability, and I'm also a member. Talking about population, I have a lot of interest on that, and I wanted even talking to the minister in person, but I believe the communique will speak better. However, in 170 million Nigerians we're having today, the person from the NPC, National Population Commission, can confirm we have 25.5 million Nigerians with disability. And out of these 25.5 million Nigerians with disability, we have 19.5 that are on youthful age, which are very active sexually and reproductively. However, we are looking at how the population of this country will become in the next years, that's 30 years from now, which we are all crying of. We are not looking at how the disability rate will increase. This data I just gave you is something 2009, it is not included the Boko Haram crisis in the northeast and other stuff that left over 200 to 300 Nigerians physically challenged today. And also, anytime this country are making decisions, issues of physically challenged is not included, it's not inclusive. I have issue with the first topic we discussed. We got invitation to participate in the program in Kaduna, but before we got invitation, it was late. And the entire document, which I think people can confirm from me here, there are 3 things that are very important that they neglected. The issue of accessibility, the issue of inclusiveness, and also the issue of curriculum. Because I look at, particularly I developed family planning to be a hobby, a passion, not because of anything. I was somewhere in Gombe last 2 years, I met a deaf person, who he wanted to see how his wife can stop bearing child. But did anybody educate him on family planning? How can he use condom? How can they at least educate his wife? Are we making the hospital in that accessible manner that somebody in a wheelchair can go there at least and access the services? All these are issues that please, as family planners, as government, we need to look into. Not because of anything, but because we are looking at the repercussion to some people. We all have rights to enjoy all government infrastructure and other stuff. And our light can surely be limited and be denied of if all these are not taken into cognizance. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Give him a good round of applause. I think that is the end of it. We are now going to have parting shots. Mr. Chairman, sir, your parting thoughts. I'm sorry for disrupting.
Thank you very much. I was going to say that I was involved with population as the person who had responsibility for creating in this country the number of enumeration areas, the demarcation for the 72 census. It was a census that started with a lot of expectation that we might get a proper count for the country. It failed because people were more interested in inflating the figure of their area than in really knowing how many people they have. But Nigeria then went further to compound that because I've heard everybody talking about urbanization. But in fact, this country doesn't recognize the category called urban. So there is no real governance at the correct level where it could make an impact properly. Small towns and middle-sized towns have been merged together and called a local government. So nobody really is responsible, because if you had 7 towns, like I have in Oyo State, they told they are one local government, and the chap in charge can move around and do very little except talk. The big cities were caught up because the real issue about the Nigerian constitution was that it defined a local government not by where the people settle, but by the number of people that a local government must have between 160,000 and 800,000. And so you have big cities are caught up into smaller areas. In fact, sometimes part of a big city is caught and added to another city 20 miles away. Now, this issue of governance is vitiated a number of things that cities must have. And they must have it because they want to be a self-governing unit. The things cities need, rural areas don't need it. They don't need the same amount of tarred roads, the same amount of stormwater drainage, the same amount of... And so by Nigerian constitution, just thinking when they say local government, 774, what's that? And so my final comment is to the Population Commission. In the past, in the 52, 53 census, in the 63 census, it was the population, this chief statistician and his group, that defines what is a city or what is a town. But that we don't know now. We don't know in Nigeria what's a town. How many towns do we have? We know we have 774 as if it's written in stone. All because the federal government thinks it must fund every local government. It's not because that's the operational unit. And that's why increasingly you will find the more important people in our communities are the traditional rulers, because they know their community. The local government chairman is almost an irrelevance, but is the one that gets money from the federal and does what it likes, or the councillors do what they like with it, because they're not easy to hold down. And their real constituency is the governor of the state, not the people themselves. It's the governor that can sack them, not the people. And so as we talk about population and how it must grow, I think it's important, especially now the Council, the Population Commission is here, to realize that when a country is developing, it is always important to make that distinction because it happens in the process. People move from rural area to urban areas, and the urban must be prepared to receive those people. But now we don't even know what's urban in Nigeria, what's rural, because we are told we have 774 local government, whatever that means. So all I'm trying to say is that I want to thank those who are concerned with how many people, how our whole population dynamics work, and to say that I hope next year we will start seeing some real attention paid by government to many of the issues we've raised at this session. I want to end by thanking the organizers again for inviting me and to thank them for bringing such brilliant people who really committed to working about our population to this annual lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Before we go, there will be a vote of thanks from Dr. Ibrahim. He is the MD, or the Director General of PPFN. Please give him a warm welcome. He's always at the back, very shy, but a performer. But before I hand over the microphone to him to give the vote of thanks, I want to recognize Sir Ikechukwu. Is he in this room? Ikechukwu, please come to the front seat. Let's see you. This guy works for the Federal Road Safety Corps. He makes sure that the trafficking and LTI is well done. Thank you so much for the wonderful work you have done. And let me see all the members of the planning committee of APLS. Please stand up for recognition. All of you, stand up wherever you are for recognition. All right, give them a good round of applause. Dr. Ibrahim.
Thank you very much, Educate. It's my pleasure on behalf of the organizing committee of the Annual Population Lecture Series, Planned Parenthood Federation of Nigeria, and the National Planning Commission, as well as other partners involved in this initiative, to thank you all for your active participation in this session. Indeed, we have come a long way from yesterday to today. We have seen that the gap between Amin and Amen is that the social law. I think the Kanuri and Fulani, they have started with their differences. And we have had an intergenerational dialogue. Prof, who is 85, and those on the other side, some young people under 25. May I now ask the young men and women in black t-shirts to stand up. These are members of the Youth Action Movement, a body of volunteers of PPFN, who are peer educators, health mobilizers, activists on the other planet. There is a planet that is next to China and India, the cyberspace. They are very active on the social media, so they are very powerful tools of achieving our objectives. But I've been asked to give vote of thanks. And this week, the two words vote and thanks, all I think is let the Americans vote wisely so that we can thank them. Because Honorable Minister said the SDGs are hinged on partnership. Breaking silos. Some people are thinking of building walls. I think we need to re-echo the words of President Reagan. Chancellor, bring down that wall. Chairman of this occasion, Professor Mabugunze, it's indeed my pleasure to thank you for giving us your time, your experience, and your expertise. in this dialogue. It's also my pleasure to thank the Honorable Minister, Hajda Amina Mohammed, for taking time to be with us. And also our distinguished panelists, Professor Wako, Professor Galadensi, and the International Village Gate President. But all our efforts with the planning committee would have come to nullity without this active and engaging audience. You have been very wonderful, and we thank you for accepting our invitation to be here. And we wish you more successful sessions today and tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Ibrahim, vintage Ibrahim. Please, can you give him a good round of applause? There is a pattern question here. Somebody sent in this anonymously. He said, in looking at the way forward for our country, as one of the world's largest populations, what are you doing to conserve our environment? Please consider this as your departs. I think that's very, very poignant. And then it's a very good question. Whoever sent it, thank you so much. I think this is the end of the session. I want to thank all of you for being very supportive of my work. You made my work very easy. I thank the Professor Babongije